I'll be honest, Love, Death and Robots Season 4 didn't quite captivate me as much as the earlier seasons. When this show is at its best, sparks fly. The brilliance of the first 3 seasons stemmed from a unique fusion of fantastic animation and nuanced storytelling that felt like a showcase of Eastern animation's potential to tell actually good stories for an adult audience. But this season, it felt more uninspired and recycled. The messages came off as shallow, as if the stories were coasting rather than conveying something meaningful, either to be easily digestible or for comedy's sake. The previous seasons had some of that, but it was very few and far between. That said, instead of dwelling on what didn't work, I want to focus on what did, because a few episodes still reminded me why I fell in love with this series in the first place. For me, those standouts were Spider Rose, the screaming Tyrannosaurus, and how Zeke got religion. I'll explore what I loved about each one, how they used visual storytelling effectively, and anything else that stood out. I also want to share how these episodes connected with me on the situation model level of comprehension, which is just a fancy way of saying I like stories that stir up memories, emotions, knowledge, or personal experiences. That resonates in my life and gives me a better understanding of myself and my surroundings. When a show makes me pause and ask, why does this affect me so much? That's when I started digging into the cinematography, the composition, the structure, and the emotional subtext, looking for answers, which is what these episodes did. Before we get into all of that, though, I want to touch on the season's opening episode. It does a great job setting the tone and hinting at the more prominent emotional themes this season explores. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you connected with episodes that didn't quite resonate for me. Some of your insights into Jujutsu Kaisen have entirely changed how I view certain scenes, and I'd love it if you could help me see something I missed here too. So, with all that said, are you ready? Let's begin. The season kicks off with a tribute to the Red Hot Chili Peppers by recreating their legendary concert, their 2003 Slain Castle performance of the song Can't Stop, a song whose entire message can be found within the last couple of lines. You can't stop the spirits when they need you. Life is more than just a read-through. For those unfamiliar with the production process, a read-through is the practice where the cast sits around a table and reads the script aloud, often with the director present. It's a way for actors to become more familiar with the story, the characters in the scene, and their lines. That way, when a camera rolls, everything that is recorded is as perfect as possible. Unfortunately, life doesn't offer that luxury. There are no manuals or scripts for us to follow, and we run on limited time. We spend so much of it planning, preparing, and working for someone else's dream that we lose sight of how little time we actually have, condemning us to live a life that ends in regret and what-ifs when we are older. So although it's wise to think and plan, you need to take action. Do whatever you want to do in this life. The song name drops a few who listened to their spirits and took action that changed their landscape. Julia Butterfly Hill, an environmental activist, spent over 700 days in a 1,000-year-old redwood tree to protect it.
I have learned how little thriving I did in my life, and in society as a whole, that's a generalization that fits. We are attached because of our fears and because of our comfortability attachments, that we won't let go and just flow with whatever's happening and jump off a cliff and know that we'll have wings to fly. We stay attached and we do things that maybe in our heart and our spirits doesn't feel like we're thriving and we're just existing. But coming up here, I was broken on every level, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And as a result, I learned that I could not only survive in a tree, but that I could thrive.
Charlie Parker, aka Bird, was a jazz prodigy who broke the rules and created bebop jazz. Defunct was a band that combined punk, funk, and jazz before it was popular. These figures rejected complacency and paved the way for others to follow him. I love that they made everyone puppets, not just the band, which gives a sense of unity in the struggles of the human condition. One of the reasons RHCP is so beloved is that Anthony Kiedis' songs reflect his struggles, feelings, and criticism of society in a very honest manner, and people identify with that. So, sure, you and me are puppets. We get jerked around here and there by forces beyond us. But even if it is true and we are nothing but cogs in the machine, that doesn't mean you can't live a life worth living. I wouldn't say this episode particularly stood out or evoked strong emotions. This iconic song sets the stage for the episodes we will discuss. Let's start with Spider Rose. Spider Rose is a classic revenge story about Lydia, a grieving mechanist seeking vengeance against the Shapers who killed her husband. The story opens with strong imagery showing Rose's inner turmoil through a dream and her substance usage as a coping mechanism. This internal conflict is also reflected in her design. A molten lava core symbolizes the raw, suppressed anger and pain. After mechanical augmentations likely for long-term survival far from home, she is fractured, half machine, half human. Despite her external roughness, however, Rose is quite gentle with animals. So, after declining money and status, they offered her a pet. Since what she wanted, which was the weapons, couldn't be fulfilled because that would break the treaties. Reluctantly, Rose agreed to a trial period with the creature. After analysing the DNA, she finds it mirrors that of its previous owners, foreshadowing that Nosy would become a representation of her inner self. Now, with that context, some scenes gain deeper meaning. For example, her simple game of fetch metaphorically shows the cyclical nature of grief and anxiety that many experience. Painful memories return relentlessly, replaying loss as mental torture. However, changing how we relate to this pain, acknowledging, releasing, and accepting its return, can lead to acceptance and letting go, a process of counting losses and moving forward. Ultimately, even with flashbacks, she finds strength beyond her past reliance on that substance, allowing her to move on. After tiring Nosy out, Rose puts it to sleep. When she wakes, the creature is in a cocoon, a powerful symbol of transformation and healing. Upon its vulnerable emergence, she holds it and says, "It's okay now," showing she's starting to move past her inner struggles and face her vulnerabilities. Beneath the anger is Rose's deep loneliness and pain. The 11 dead clones brought no peace, highlighting a sense of displacement and the need to address the core issue. Even after finally killing her target, the consequences are life-ending. Yet amidst this despair, she tells Nosy, "You saved me. I was already dead before you got here." Understanding this can help us focus on the characters' feelings and motivations, as well as how they are viscerally affected by their past. What this episode nails is the nuance of the writing. The narrative conveys a sense of satisfaction in the act of revenge. It feels preachy when the media portrays revenge as empty and useless, but I'd argue that revenge often brings satisfaction and closure. The question is not whether it is good or bad, but whether it is worth it. While revenge may taste sweet, it can also prolong pain and have negative consequences, including a rippling effect. However, the reality is that some people are willing to pay that price, and instead of judging, the writing allows the adult audience to form their own opinions. This episode explored grief in a primal and relatable way. You don't need to share Rose's exact experience of your loved one dying to understand her pain. Most of us know what it's like to hold grudges or feel stuck after losing someone or something that brought us happiness. This particular episode resonated deeply with me because I adopted my dog, Frank, the day after a breakup. It brought that memory to the surface, helping me understand why he's so essential to me. To this day, getting him remains the best decision I've ever made. Frank didn't fix me, but his unconditional love helped me become less codependent. I sometimes used relationships to fill my loneliness, a pattern I only genuinely recognized after his arrival. With him by my side, I found myself using dating apps less and less, which indirectly led to healthier future relationships, and my self-worth no longer depended on someone else. The screaming Tyrannosaurus follows Mai, a young woman torn from her home, raised and trained to fight in a brutal arena where warriors kill each other, while trying to avoid being crushed by resurrected prehistoric beasts. My first impression of her was that of a spectator, someone who refuses to be part of the spectacle, yet participating is her only option. The commentator, voiced by Mr. Beast, opens the match, and it was so on-brand. He sounded exactly like he does in his videos. I found it darkly ironic that he narrated a story about the human cost of performance. Talk about meta typecasting, because many people view him as a key figure in what they call the beastification of YouTube, a massive shift towards hypercuts and adrenaline-fueled content designed to exhaust your attention span and keep you hooked rather than just creators being themselves. Signaling a loss of authenticity on YouTube has been noted. While the animation in this episode is top-notch, the core message isn't necessarily groundbreaking. You've seen it in Gladiator, Hunger Games, and Squid Game. But what made it stick for me was the context the opening song provided. It suggested that even if you feel like a forced participant in life, stuck in a system you can't change, you can still find ways to make your mark, simply by following your passions. It's about staying authentic in the areas where you do have agency, finding ways to personalize your experience, even when you feel trapped by circumstance. A sense of resignation to the consequences of her choices. It reminds me of this chaotic trip I took to a festival. Looking back, the journey was comedically difficult. There was a massive flight delay which caused me to miss the shuttle that would drive me to the location, so instead I had to carry 2 ridiculously heavy bags for 4 miles to a bus station, all to meet up with some random people I met online who were also going to the festival to give me a ride. But if you were to ask me what my favourite festival was, I will say this one every time, and I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. To have something we can look back on with love and pride, even if there were moments when the journey sucked at the time. And to me, the people I met, the experiences I had dancing with others without even knowing their name or caring about what they looked like, it was indeed an experience that made me appreciate life as it was. The quotes from the episode that resonated with this idea were, "The aristocracy mates for money and power, but we who can own nothing have something real, something primal, something true." Sure, for the producers, the festival may be a meaningless cash grab, but the experiences I had there put a smile on my face even to this day, which, to me, is all that matters. When I saw this, I also thought about content creation, and I'm not talking about YouTube. Good stories and good shows require time to create, write, and develop. As someone who values cinematography and creativity, it's not easy to see its corporatization, where people's passion and lived experiences are put in the hands of CEOs who prioritize profits over the message that trickles down to authors doing the same. There is massive respect for people who choose to remain true to their original message. You can say yes to contracts for resources because, let's be honest, a paycheck to support you and your team is fantastic, but refuse to be controlled. South Park is an excellent example of this. These guys rarely bend the knee. Indie is thriving, taking power away from corporations and giving back control to the creators whose passion and hunger drive them to work on creating something they can be proud of at the end of the road. The last one is how Zeke got religion. I'm just going to read IMDb for this one. B-17 Flying Fortress Liberty Bell has the oddest mission of World War II. A journey into occupied France to bomb a church before the Nazis can raise an ancient evil. This traumatic mission leads down an unexpected path toward faith. This one stuck with me for a strange reason. To me, the entire story was about how wild life can be, and how the hardest missions can bring someone to their knees and make them hold on to religion. To quote Young, "Among all my patients in the second half of life, there has not been one whose problem in the last resort was not finding a religious outlook on life." Like Zeke, I know a lot of people with complicated relationships with religion. Growing up, I watched my mother move through multiple faiths: Christianity, Catholicism, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventism, and I was there for most of those explorations. Religion, at its best, is a coping mechanism. What I mean by that is that it is a very real way to manage pain, find hope and purpose, and cope with life. Because the alternative is terrifying, to accept that all the pain, all the beauty, all the everything might be meaningless, and that we might be meaningless. I found a connection between dark fantasy anime and me to be similar. Stories that often blend psychology and philosophy with deeply personal struggles. That connection eventually led me to want to learn more about existentialism, Buddhism, and psychoanalysis, which helped me understand myself and others and find comfort in the stories of people who have struggled through life. I've also seen how religion can significantly influence people's redemption. I've seen people who have committed serious crimes and found reason to repent and change because of religion, who found purpose and a second chance at life through faith. And even though there are always bad faith actors, there is a lot of good in this world because of religion. My favourite quote from this one was, "I wanted to let Zeke know that I understood what he was feeling, to realise we don't know what this world is made of or our place in it." Still, there wasn't anything I could say to make this go down any easier, so I just kept my mouth shut and let Zeke get religion. In conclusion, even if the season wasn't the best in terms of what I like, but that doesn't mean it was a failure. When Spider Rose was the only one who blew me away in terms of writing, some episodes were good in my eyes because they resonated with my lived experiences, and that's what makes shows like Has Been Hotel, whose heavily criticised for the writing quality, still find massive success because of their relatability. That is why at the end of the intro, I asked people if they'd episodes that didn't particularly resonate with me but did for them. I'd like to know why, so I can learn how to have a different perspective on the media I love. Anyways, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.